Welcome to the Intuitive Inc. radio show live with your host, Servet Hassan, with another inspiring author who can help you discover your true potential. Live on ClearSource Radio.
Hello, everybody. It's Sunday night. The name of the show is indeed Intuitive Inc., and I am Servet Hassan, and we've got a really interesting show for you tonight, all about why past lives matter, and they do. And the author I have on tonight knows all about it. His name is Michael Goddart. He has written a book called In Search of Lost Lives, and he's delved deeply into this. I read this book, and it's fascinating. In fact, I couldn't put it down. I got partway through some of these, and then I was like, oh, wait, the connections between the past and the present. And he's had not only an interesting life, he's had interesting lives, and many of them. But in this one, he's gotten an MFA in creative writing from Bowling Green State University. I also know he went to Cal Berkeley. UC, yay, Bears, UC Berkeley. My daughter graduated from there, and I have to put a plug in for that. But aside from this book, he's written Spiritual Revolution, A Seeker's Guide, 52 Powerful Principles for Your Mind and Soul, which I also have and just opened it this morning. I love it because I open it to just a page a day. And today I read a few pages about Pray for God, which was interesting. So we'll talk about that. And then he's also written a book called Bliss, 33 Simple Ways to Awaken Further. He's awesome. Welcome, Michael. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Oh, thank you, Servet, and thank you for that great introduction. I'm so happy to be on your show.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to have you. You have had not only an interesting life here, we're going to talk about all about that, but you've had some really interesting lives that you've connected into. So before we get into that, let me just ask you how I know it started at Berkeley, but it kind of started when you were around 12 years old, I think, when you picked up an Edgar Cayce book, whom I'm a big fan of.
Exactly. Yeah, mm-hmm. I had kind of, once we moved from a suburb of Chicago to Marin County to Bel Air, which is right by Strawberry, it was like I had a total awakening coming to California. I started doing automatic writing, trying to contact spirits. I started self-hypnosis.
At 12?
At 12? And then when I was 11, yes,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Wow, yeah, I mean, that's awesome. What 11-year-old do you know that starts doing that? That's amazing. Okay, I had to ask that. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. And then when I was 11, I was in a religious service for a holiday, and it just felt like, I'd done this so many times before. It wasn't what I was here to do. So I was actually actively confronting the fact that I was going to die when I was 11 years old. And I kind of resolved to beat death, to find immortality, and to exist with a consciousness of the ultimate bliss. That was my search. And that was my highest priority for my life. So I started reading, and I came across Edgar Cayce soon when I was 12. And as soon as I read about reincarnation, I just absolutely knew automatically that was true, and I'd had past lives. But I didn't ever really go looking for them. I would go to psychics occasionally in my 20s and 30s, and they would tell me things, and usually it wouldn't resonate. But one day it just all came together, and I was able to start putting all the information together. But actually, all my life I've been preparing for this. And also what I discovered, Servet, is that between lives, I had done some of the preparation because I was meant to do this coming in this life. But I've been searching for a particular spiritual path for several lives, very consciously for the last 3 lives, starting when I was an architect in Baltimore right after the American Revolution. So, and then I came across the Master Saint Germain, which many of your listeners may be familiar with, and so that really intrigued me. But feel free to ask any questions about any other lives.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you didn't go looking for them, right? They sort of... Go ahead.
It's just, well, one day, and actually several months after a second major surgery, it was actually on the anniversary of when I'd been initiated onto my current spiritual path. I just, all of a sudden I realized I could know whatever I wanted to know, and things started opening up to me. It was sort of like a channel opened with my higher consciousness. So this is on any kind of channel with some entity I don't know, or some being. I'm not really sure what that being is. It's just an expansion into my higher consciousness. And so what happened was there was a lot of confirmation throughout the whole process of intuition I'd had about where I'd lived, things I'd experienced. We were talking about Cambridge right before the show.
Right.
And I actually lived in Cambridge in this life. I went there several times before I lived there, and it was just utterly familiar. So deja vu is can be a great trigger of past lives. And I've had a few very powerful deja vu experiences where, like, my knees went wobbly, and I was trying to remember, who my neighbors were. So if any listeners have had really keen automatic deja vu of feeling of something that's utterly familiar, that can be a door into a past life. Deja vu is commonly understood as the idea that you've been somewhere, or already seen something. But I believe the actual literal French translation is something already seen. So if you've already seen something, been somewhere, that comes back to you. So I think we all have that capacity to reach, to bring the past into the present.
Right. In your book, which we're discussing right now, everybody, In Search of Lost Lives, and there's a subtitle there too. It's in which I should tell people it's Desires, Sanskaras, and the Evolution of a Mind and Soul. And I love in the book that you make mind and soul one word. That was interesting to me.
Thank you.
But also, I loved that. I did. Also in the book, you described deja vu. See, I did read it. You said it's like passing back through different time zones while you're flying across the world, And that when I read that, I went, that's true. Because I have deja vu experiences all the time. All the time.
Oh, boy. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
and it's sort of like, you're kind of like, you're kind of above the world almost, merging through different time zones. And you're still kind of in the present, but there's like an overlay. Probably the strongest deja vu I had when the last day I was in Juhu Beach, which is a suburb, a movie colony south of Mumbai, Bombay, and I took a different way back. I was just following my intuition, and it was the last day, and I turned on this road, and I saw this big stone arch which had written on it in big letters, Metaphysical Society, and I almost, like, I wasn't in the present anymore. I knew I'd lived there, and I was consciously actually trying to remember my neighbors and who lived there. And that was when was that? In 78, I believe. So it was in 2013 that I discovered, yes, I'd lived in Juhu Beach, but, per my intuition, I wasn't an Indian, I was British. So I was a British banker there in the Raj. I was stationed there for 3 years. And I had actually recently joined the Metaphysical Society in London before I shipped out. So these intuitive feelings you have are often quite correct. That's what I found.
Yeah, I do. It's just people don't trust them, or they shrug it off. But you really...
Right. Or they turn outside themselves, too, and rely on other people, which who knows what they know, actually. Right.
That's true, too. But so first of all, you meditate a lot, which, I think when you, in the book, it was sort of like you were journaling. You weren't like channeling, which is good, but you were journaling, right?
Well, I kept a spiritual journal since I was in 77. I started meditating daily when I was 19, and when I was 21, I started meditating 2.5 hours a day, which I've kept up throughout. So I was journaling, but typically I would make notes before I'd go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
I'd meditate for a few minutes, and then I would access stuff. And then once I started writing, more details would open up.
Mm-hmm.
But what actually surprised me was how specific the details I got were. And it was like my higher knowing would know exactly what was true and what wasn't true. If I was trying to remember some subtle thing or some specific detail about what my father did, I would know for sure what wasn't the case. So I didn't write anything in the book, which is consisting of my journal entries that I didn't verify and confirm.
With your higher consciousness. Because most people are going to say, how do we know you're just not making this up? This isn't just your imagination, Right.
Well, Servette, I'm a writer.
Mm-hmm.
If I had made this up, first of all, I would have been a prince in some fabulous country. I would have been a courtesan with all kinds of leaders. I would have made it a lot more dramatic. I mean, so many of my professions in these past lives, I was a teacher or an administrator, and it very much fits into who I am today. But I think one way people can feel that this is true, of course it would help if they knew me, but I write about all my different idiosyncrasies, my inherent interests and abilities that I had as a child and as a teenager, and I link these to particular past lives and specific experiences.
Right.
So all these things I wanted to know and all my interest in doing things, I relate all of these to particular past lives. And a lot of them are really quite mundane. I was a trapper in Serbia. I cut cloth when I was in Denmark, right after the birth of Christ, right around that time. And actually that's the life when my higher mind began to kind of open up and start to breathe. So I also talk a lot about higher mind and lower mind, and I think, and there are a lot of lives in the book. I really didn't plan to come across so many, and I even thought of putting 20 up on my website, Goddart.com. But but the reason there's so many past lives, there are 88. 71 human and 17 animal, is that it was to give readers a small sense of all our comings and goings. We've just been coming, going for, probably, hundreds of thousands of years.
Right.
So, yeah. And then go ahead.
No, I believe that. I think one of my gurus in India once told me that, you never die. And I thought, oh God, that's depressing. It is like, no.
Well,
when
you don't
I
die.
was young.
We just come and occupy new bodies.
Right, exactly.
And a few of the lives when I did things that were really mean or out of ego, I didn't come back as a human. I fell down and came back as an animal. And often those animal lives weren't much fun.
Right.
And when I did some really bad things, some horrible things like take my country into a war, I was in a state of reformation, undergoing indescribable suffering because I'd caused the death of over 260,000 people needlessly.
Right.
So, but that's like a samskara, which, as you mentioned, is a subtitle of a book. I want to just clarify that a samskara is an impression from a past life. It's some type of feeling, memory, association from a past life. And, much of the time, that's what I call a notable life, which is sort of a larger-than-life life that I kind of still have with me when I was a ruler. And I just find myself kind of adjudicating world affairs. And, if I was a benevolent autocrat, this is what I would do. And it's like my mind automatically goes there, and I have to remind myself, wait a minute, you're just a former tax accountant. You're not a ruler. So,
Right. No, that's fine. Yeah, and it's true in your book because when I read it, I was like, oh, okay, so now, like you've figured out why you have this fetish for stationery and office supplies, but that's because you were a banker and then you were an office supply.
My most recent past life, I was the co-owner of an office supply company
right.
In Britain, and And actually, that explains why I learned German so easily. I mean, I learned within weeks of going there as an exchange student, I was dreaming in German. Well, I took classes as an adult in London, and then I went out to Zurich for 3 years to open an office there, came back to London, and then went to Cologne, Köln. So I spoke fluent German. Yeah, and I've always had this total fetish for office supply. It's like the one thing I never scrimp in. I just get the best. And it relates to that life. I had this sense of entitlement to get whatever I want, you know.
Right. And also, I think there was one part where I read, correct me if I'm wrong because I'm doing this from memory, but you said hoarding made you a cow.
Yes.
Yeah,
that was a life where we kind of went through a bit of a famine. And I would kind of go out at night and dig up root vegetables and hide them in our hut and cover it like with straw. And, you know, a lot of the families were ailing and getting weak. And eventually one of the leaders of our community came in and they got suspicious and they did this major search of the hut and they uncovered all the vegetables we were eating on the sly. And, you know, because of my greed, it was simply greed, but also wanting to protect the family, you know, there were people who really suffered from that. So my next life, I came back as a cow in Africa and had 3 calves. And that, I'm happy to report, was my last animal life.
Right.
But it was within my last 50. Actually, the book goes through all of my last 50 lives, and this life, actually, that was, I believe, my 41st life back. And from then on, I was a human, actually, you know, coming and going. Typically 12, 13 years between lives, which is a very short time.
Right.
Because there's not time as such in the inner regions. I mean, there's time to a degree, but nothing like we have here.
Right. So, you know, most people can't get through this life, let alone think about, you know, all these other lives that have gone on before. But you touched on it a little bit when you were a cow in Africa, that it is kind of, if you do remember or something does get triggered, because Sanskaras are triggered by something usually. Is that correct? Am I right about that?
Yeah, I had all kinds of triggers, like, often, a few times movies really triggered past lives. I was just watching TV and a preview came on from 12 Years a Slave, and I'd already seen the preview once, and I just felt a lot of revulsion at the idea of, you know, slaves. But this time it's like, oh my God, it's like I relived what it was like to be a slave. And I knew I'd been a slave in Atlantean times, in Atlantis. So eventually I recovered that life, and I was taken as a slave when I was 21 at a much older age. And I wrote about 2 other lives as a slave when I was taken much, much younger. So, I mean, the rulers just had the power to take anyone they want and keep you as a slave. And I didn't live long. I ended up having a spear thrown, you know, through my back by a rival faction that was trying to take power. So I actually had 10 lives as a slave in Atlantis. So,
and
I was different races. You know, this is why any kind of racism is so ridiculous and absurd and unfounded. You know, I just write about one of my lives when I was in Africa, in South Africa. That was a very interesting life to write about. But, you know, it's like a lot of people, I mean, I mainly had been a European, but other races too. I mean, I lived in what is now Indonesia quite a long, long time ago. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, you talk about movies a lot, like you watch The English Patient, and that brought back all kinds of things from other lives. You were British a lot. Yeah, you were British a lot. And you still have an affinity for that.
That movie for me, it actually brought back 2 lives, my last 2 British lives. And that was sort of the most powerful kind of trigger. I just couldn't believe what was going on. I was like I was back in those lives. And what was so confusing, I didn't know at the time that it was 2 different lives, 2 very different lives. And so when I began to uncover the lives, and these were the first two, it all began to make sense.
Right. Yeah, that was really fascinating. And now you also just backtrack a little bit because you mentioned Atlantis, and there are some lives that were not necessarily on Earth either, correct?
Right. I mean, it hasn't been coming and going between planets, but I definitely was on a planet. The best approximation in English is Jorlu, and then I was on a planet Vizine. So my first planet, I was mainly when I was a human, I was a female. I was a woman, and I go all the way back to what I call the beginning of my spiritual evolution when I was a mother with 6 children. So on that planet, I was primarily a female, and on Earth, I've been mainly male. The planetary lives have been real interesting for me, and it was sort of like the people were more spiritually evolved, although not technologically evolved. But what I found really fascinating were all the different kinds of professions that I did in my parents. We did a lot of advanced mental work, helping people with their lives, actually.
Well, yeah, and you've had several mothers who were artists, and your mother now was an artist in this lifetime.
Yeah, she
right?
was a very well-known artist in the Bay Area, but that was actually my parents and my brother. This was actually our first life together, and that kind of explains why the family was kind of at war with each other. I mean, it's just one of the hardest families I think I've had, at least that I've written about.
Yes, let's talk about that because you have a part of the book about the cohort of 7, and I remember when my daughter was younger and we got into it, when she was yelling and screaming and going, I'm the worst mother on earth. And I don't know, I think she just wanted to strangle me. But I said to her, it's your fault. You picked me. And then she said, I must have been in a hurry. I was like,
what'd she say?
She said, she said, I must have been in a hurry. And I said,
funny.
Pick more carefully. And I also told her, I said, maybe I was your mother in a past life and really you did this to me, so it's your fault. She didn't buy into any of this, but I do think that we do reconnect with certain people over and over again.
Oh, we do. We do. And actually, that was the one thing that kind of surprised me a bit because people I'm very intimate with, I was actually surprised we didn't have more lives together. Like I'd realized we'd have 3 lives in the past or 2 lives, but the people I've had many, many lives with on Earth, over 20, is the cohort of 7, and that just started coming to me about 6 months after I started to recover all the lives. And these are the beings I was always with between lives. We were like a group, and we were like having instruction and lessons, and it was for our spiritual betterment. And we incarnated as just every kind of relationship you can imagine together. But what was so fascinating for me, Servet, was that this life and 2 lives ago, when I was a British banker, we were all on Earth together, and I knew all of them.
All 7?
So that was really fascinating. And 3 of them this life were initiated by my teacher onto the same spiritual path. And 3 others I only knew when I lived in Sonoma County.
Right.
So that was really interesting for me. And it just explained so much. I mean, it was just explained this kind of overriding concern and empathy and closeness that we felt, even though we weren't that involved in each other's lives. But the connection was there. It just explains so much.
Right.
So I think often we incarnate with people who are close, and people may decide to be spouses or in the same family, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do think that I've known my daughter many times before.
Yes.
And I think that's part of the evolution of the soul. I think that really honestly we come to Earth because it takes us out of the spiritual realm so that we can grow in consciousness. Because I don't think it's easy to grow in consciousness when you're in spirit. And
well, this
that?
is so much more challenging, and Earth was way, way more challenging than the other two planets where life was easier. But I think one of the hallmarks of the book is that in many lives I highlight particular spiritual experiences, and there may have been just one in a particular life with an experience which I would call an evolutionary spiritual experience. And that kept kind of refining me, spiritualizing me, strengthening my higher mind. So if anyone gets anything from the book, I want them to focus on what they may have had as a spiritual experience, because it just spans so many, many lives, my whole evolution. But we are here. I mean, one of the things I write about 7 lives where the spiritual being enhanced the human experience. That's a reflection of that famous quote by Teilhard de Chardin. You know, we are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Exactly.
And we come here, you know, to pay off karma and hopefully to go through some spiritual evolution.
Right. And I think if we listen to our intuition, there are moments that I remember when my daughter was young and they did a Shakespeare festival thing at her junior high, her middle school, and I volunteered and I said I'll read tarot cards. And it's a very fundamental Christian evangelical world there. And one woman in the front row turned around and started screaming at me, "You're a witch! You're a witch!" And the only thing that ever crossed my mind when she was yelling at me was, "Oh, not again." That's what crossed my mind. And I thought, you may have been, or she may have thought you were a witch in a prior life and she came across you again. But who knows? No, it was more like, oh, are they still doing this? I've already been there, done that. You know, it's like, I got to do this again. You know, which it was kind of, that's how I felt. And that's why she was going off and everybody thought I was just going to lose it. But I was too busy thinking about, we're still doing this. I got to do this again. So I didn't get upset at all. I was like, okay, fine. I'll just bring playing cards because playing cards were originated from tarot cards anyway. But that's a whole other story. You know, we're halfway through the show already, Michael. I could talk to you for hours. We are on the line with Michael Goddart. He's written a book called In Search of Lost Lives. He's written many other really good books too, but this one's fascinating about his past lives that he's tapped into and what he's learned and how he's grown from that. Now, if somebody wants to find you or the book, where would they go?
Well, for more information, go to my website, which is Goddart.com. Spelled God, G-O-D, and then Dart, another D, A-R-T for Tom.com. And from there they can go to Amazon to get the books. And that gives a lot more information. It has excerpts, 29 things that the book does, which I think they'd find interesting.
Oh, it's all fascinating. And
on Facebook, actually, my page on Facebook is called More Bliss. Which is going to be
Bliss.
My next book.
Oh,
More Bliss.
Oh, I love that. More Bliss. And that you said is your next book, right?
Yeah, that actually has already been written, but I was just so busy being a tax accountant, I didn't have time to go through publishing. And then when I started writing this just seemed so much more urgent and important to get out.
Good.
So I kind of leapfrogged over More Bliss and had this one published.
Yeah, and I'm glad, and we need less tax accounting and more writing, okay?
Right.
Just so you know. I'm going to open up the lines here, 313-8880. If there's anybody out there that's brave enough to call in and ask Michael a question about one of their past lives or one of his, or the connection, or why you can or can't remember any of them, or what you're teaching, please call in now. I think it's fascinating, and he's got a real handle on this because he's not only just tapped into his own past lives, but you're just a deeply spiritual and knowledgeable person. So, and again, 949-313-8880. So yeah, that was fascinating because I do think people do come back into our lives. So do you think part of the past, oh, we have a caller calling in. Here we go. Hold on 1 second. Here we go.
Okay.
I want to join them in. I don't know if I was going to put you on hold, but here we go. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Hello? Hello? Okay, I've lost everybody here. That's not good. I think I need to get a hold of somebody here. So, hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Hi, there you are. Are you on the line?
Yes. Hi, Michael and Servette.
I don't know if
Catherine.
I don't know if Michael, I might have lost him because Skype changed again. And so our studio line, I don't know if he's on the line or not. Michael, are you there? Hello? No, he's not. Let me see if I can get him. Technical difficulty is not my cup of tea here, but let's see if we can get him back. Hold on. Okay. I don't know if I've got him back or not. Just hold on, Catherine. We're going to, if not, I'm going to wait for him to call back in. I don't know if he will. Okay,
do you want me to hang up so you can call him?
I'm going to try him right now. I'm going to try to get him on the line. Let's see if he picks up. I'm trying. Hold on. And we're going to...
You got it.
We're doing this. This is what happens when things are live. People just don't know here because they've changed things on the system, and I should have tested it. But I'm not fired yet, so just give me a chance. But he's not picking up, so I don't know how to do this. Anyway, Catherine, can you go ahead and ask your question, and then I'll see if I can't get him? Oh, here, yeah. Let me see. Hello? Michael? No, I don't think that worked. Okay, one person on the call. We do not have him. So I'm going to have to call him back.
I'll ask my question, or I'll just hang up, and I'd rather listen to him than have a question at.
Okay, here we go. I think this might add him. Okay, here we go. Hello? Okay. Hello? Hello? Okay. Go ahead and ask your question. I'll try him again. Go ahead.
I'm very particular at certain things, and I do have addictive natures to sugar and carbs, and I thought maybe something in a past life that I did may give me some of these particular traits, and I was just going to ask him about it.
Okay, you're very particular and you want to know if that's a past life trait. Okay, I'm going to try and get him on the phone again. So if you hang up, maybe we can get him back. Here he is, I think, again. Hold on, I think this is him. Hello? Hello, Michael. Oh, there you are.
Hi, Suzette. I'm calling on another line.
There you go. Okay, I'm glad you're back. Now, we had a caller call in, and they've changed the system. So when I picked her call up, it dropped to you. So it wasn't your fault. And I don't know if she's still on the line or not. Catherine, are you there? Calling from Arizona. No, she's not. Okay, but here's what happened. She asked her question anyway. She said, because she's still listening, but she's not on the line anymore. She said that she's very particular, overly particular, and she's wondering if that has something to do with a past life and how you would go about knowing that or discovering that.
Oh, well, that's a really interesting question. It very well could be, but basically, she would have to recover which life it connects with. And I've had other, kind of not this in specifically, but other experiences where I had an idiosyncrasy and I went back and recovered what life it's related to. So there's a very good chance that she's something may have made her particular. Same thing with
Catherine. Oh
yes.
no, you're back, and now were you listening to him? Because now I think he's gone again.
No, because I only have my phone and I was on hold, and I couldn't.
Okay, he's gone again now, so I'm going to hang up. Go ahead and you can get off the line. He's answering your question. He was answering.
All right, I'll listen.
Okay.
I'll go back on.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kath.
Bye.
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 All right, now we've lost him again, so here we go. Maybe. Maybe he'll call back. After all of this, he may not. but I'm telling you, it's one thing. We're getting there. We'll get this down. But I'm hoping he just calls right back. And if not, we will try him back on the other line and get this going. But oh no, I don't know where he is. What he was saying was that you need to go back and find out which past life it refers to, because he was talking about one of his idiosyncrasies that he has in this life, and then he kind of meditated on that and got to a place where he found out it was something in another life. So, he's saying it most likely is connected, but then you have to figure out which life that is and what was going on there. And then I was going to let him keep explaining, and I shouldn't have picked up the other call, which I did, and they're not blending together and doing what they're supposed to do at this moment in time. So I'm just going to keep talking and hoping that he calls back. And if he doesn't, well, I think he will. So I'm not going to go there. And we're running out of time anyway. So I'm just going to let him finish up the show by answering the rest of Catherine's question herself. So I'm going to go ahead now, and I'm going to send him a message, and hopefully he will. I'm going to try text, because I do have a number for him. And hopefully that will do it, because it's such a fascinating subject, and we've been talking for a while, and it's been such a good show that I really, here I think he is. No? Oh. Where? Michael, call back. The past life is, okay, here he is. Yay! Michael! Oh my goodness. Hi, Michael. This is what happens when we go live and there's technical difficulties. I'm so sorry. I apologize. But
okay. Do you want me? I think you have it, but do you want me to give you my landline in case this happens again?
No, and it won't happen again. I have your landline, and I was just that's why the text didn't go through, because it's a landline and it's 76. I don't want to put your number. I don't want to say your number out loud, but that's fine. Yeah. And you're on the line now, and you're not going anywhere. So, the woman you were answering that question, and it was fascinating. And then she didn't hear the answer, because then she was still asking the question, thinking you were on the line. So why don't we go back to Catherine's question about her being very particular in this lifetime? How could she know if that's a past life, or it's just something she was born with in this one?
Yeah, well, I mean, really the only way she could know would be for her to recover the past life that led to it. Mm-hmm. I mean, she would have to recover it herself, which might be challenging. And as I was saying toward the end, if she's particular about several very different things that may stem from 2 or 3 different lives. So the only way to know really is to recover past lives. And one thing I was going to talk about just before we went to the live call-in is that actually one of the rules of this plane is that people, for the most part, can't remember their past lives. It's like one of the rules. Now, in my case, as far as I know, I'm leaving physical existence, so there are. It's sort of like an escape clause. I was able to recall them, but most people, that's really kind of the problem, is that you don't have the recall of your past lives, because if you did, you would remember really awful things you may have done and how you suffered for it.
Right.
And your behavior would really get a lot better. So unless she's able to develop that ability, it's going to be a challenge.
So then, Michael, would you just say to people that, it is here and now, so work on yourself as best as you can in the moment, in the now.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
be nice to people.
Find the best modality, on your own or with somebody else. This all comes back to following your intuition. I mean, the more you develop your intuition, the more you can progress. So if she can get Catherine in touch with your intuition, ask, is this something I need to work on? If yes, how? So you've got to develop that. Either she needs to go for some type of therapy or just work on herself, the right book. What's really good is to rely on your higher guidance, and often that just may be your higher consciousness, which really knows much more, leading you. And that's simply what happened to me. It was like a channel opened between my everyday consciousness and my higher consciousness.
Right. That makes sense, though, because, for instance, an example is when someone was screaming, "You're a witch," and they're, looking like they're going to come kill me. I knew intuitively that was, oh my God, here we go again. As opposed to, in this lifetime, I am a perfectionist. And I really don't think that's stemming from anything like that, because it's not an intuitive hit. It's more like, sometimes you just get insecure, because that's what perfectionism is. And then I just realize, or that's a way to procrastinate too, by being a perfectionist, you can procrastinate.
Well,
I figured that out.
This life too.
Yeah, but I knew it's this.
And this stems from my coping mechanisms this life, actually.
Right, me too. I know it's not. Intuitively, I know it's this life, and it has to do with what's going on now. And then I work on that myself, or you can get help, or you can do a lot of things with that. But I kind of know that that's something that's coming from the circumstances that I was born into. And maybe it happened before too. I don't know, but I kind of know that that's something that's coming about because of circumstances that are occurring in this lifetime.
Yeah, and also, Servet, you may have been aware of this before you were born. Between lives, that you're going to be a real major perfectionist this life, and this is going to be an opportunity to work on that. And get it to the state where it's just optimal, when you can for instance, you can let it go when that's appropriate. So this is something you may have already known you were going to come in with and you were going to develop, and it was something to work on. And that's why it's so great that so many people are working on themselves rather than just kind of losing their consciousness and, whatever it is they choose to lose their consciousness in.
Right. And even this caller that called in from Arizona, they were, or Colorado, wherever. Anyway, they can just take that and work on, she's aware enough that was something she knows she's being too particular, and she knows, half of the issue is to know there's an issue, so then you can work on it because if she's aware enough to know that, hey, this is not right, then you work on yourself, just like you do with people. If you're having a real issue with a father, mother, brother, lovers, whatever, sometimes that could be a past life thing. It may not be. I think if you don't get the lesson though, then that very well could occur again in a next life, right?
Right.
So do you see, do you know that these were all past lives, or do you know that some of them might have been future lives?
Oh, these are past lives. I mean, from a very, very high vantage point, there is no time. But
Right.
and someone, a caller may call in and say, well, weren't these all happening at the same time? And from a certain vantage point, everything's already happened. But for somebody who poo-poos the idea of past lives or future lives, I'd ask them, show me that World War I and World War II are happening at the same time. I don't think they'd be able to do that. I think it's pretty clear that World War I happened before World War II.
Right.
Right. We're in a plane where time is operative. That's the bottom line.
Well, I agree with that. I don't think there is such a thing as time in and of itself. I mean, I think it's just a way to organize things.
Well, it's an illusion we're caught in. Let me put it that way. And it's our reality.
That's a really good way to put it, Michael, actually. And that's kind of how I feel. And, I also had a teacher that said to me once when I questioned past lives, and she said, well, where were you before you got here? In a box? And then you just jumped out?
Well, you were a mind and soul knotted together without a body.
Of course.
In between bodies. It's
right.
that simple.
Right.
And that's why I show mind and soul as one word with the ampersand.
Right.
Because we're basically mind and souls migrating from body to body. And, how you behave. Now, people who are just, God's gift to mankind and do all these fabulous deeds, they may end up in a heaven for Earth time for thousands of years. But they're going to come back. You're always brought back because of your attachments, your karma. The only way you can get out of the physical is to find a teacher who's gone beyond the physical and to eliminate your karma, basically.
Right. And
that's a whole other topic.
That's another show, and we have to have you back then.
Yeah, that's a whole other show.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have you back anyway because I want to hear more about more bliss. But but this is really, I could talk to you for hours about this. But really, it's like, I know I have people that call me with young babies that pass or, there's a miscarriage, and I always say to them, these souls knew this, and they're done. They don't need to. They're actually lucky. You know what I mean? It's not a bad thing. They're. I think we're here as long as we need to experience some level of soul consciousness, and when that occurs. Just like you said earlier, you know that you don't have to incarnate again on an earthly plane. That doesn't mean your soul is not going to continue to grow. It's just going to grow on another level. On
a higher plane.
Right.
And this is, most of us, I think, are meant to come back, but definitely there are, sizable number of souls who eventually will leave.
Right.
And return to what I call love source, or the supreme being. And most people want to come back. My mother couldn't wait to come back, and she didn't really believe in any kind of afterlife. And the first hit I got after she died, which is a super traumatic experience, was she had just total surprise that she was still conscious, wherever she was.
Wow.
So
okay.
we're it's sort of like, when you're dreaming, everything seems very real, and then when you wake up, it's like, oh my God, I was dreaming. Well, that's the way with it is being on the physical. Everything seems very real. This is it. Nothing else is possible. But when you die, then you kind of remember, I had that earthly life. Wow.
That's
I'm glad
right.
that one's over with.
Right. And I think sometimes, when you're on that other plane and you may or may not be with, your cohort of 7, you have, you think, oh yeah, I'll go down there and I'll go through this and this and this and it's all going to be okay, because when you're on a different spiritual plane, I think that you think you can take on a lot more than when you get here. It's a whole other story, I think.
That's true, and I think most of us, I can't talk for other people because I don't occupy their consciousness, but just in my book, I talk about different spiritual teachers just briefly, but I think most people have different spiritual teachers, particularly if they're in a group. There'll be 1 or 2 main spiritual teachers who are working with them.
Right.
So they are evolving in their own way, and everything in its own way is perfect. But you're subject to the laws of karma until you transcend that.
Right.
And it's almost useless to talk about karma because everything you're going through is karma. You're creating karma. You're paying off karma. And it's sort of like it's just sort of worthless to try to figure out what karma relates to what. The best thing is to, go ahead.
Karma itself, the Sanskrit word karma itself just means action. It is neither good nor bad. It just means action. And that's right. There's always action or you wouldn't be here,
Right.
So
right. I mean, picking your nose is karmic. It's
right.
an action.
Right. Even throwing a piece of gum on the sidewalk, that's karmic,
Yeah,
you're likely going to step in something.
It's also very much related to suffering you cause, because when I caused the greatest suffering, that's when I paid really, I incurred a really heavy debt, and so if you're doing a lot of killing, you're mounting up a lot of karmic debts that have to be paid off.
Right. Well, hopefully nobody out there that's listening to my show is doing a lot to because that's not good. That's not good.
Well,
I have
it's
to.
Not just,
no, go ahead.
If I may interject something which may ruffle a few feathers, it's not just killing people. It's killing our feathered friends, for instance, too.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So, but also, I think kindness and empathy. I actually just recently wrote an article, A Key to Reincarnation, Kindness and Empathy. And I take 4 lives where kindness and empathy made all the difference, 2 lives where I wasn't kind or empathetic, and 2 lives where I kind of went beyond myself, beyond my development, and was particularly kind and empathetic. And then I show the results of those lives from those actions. So I think that's a great fallback position, to be as kind and empathetic as you can be all the time.
And compassionate, too. I think compassion plays a big part in this, too.
Absolutely.
It's a great way to wrap up the show because really, honestly, in the end, the name of the book is In Search of Lost Lives, and my guest tonight has been Michael Goddart. And it's Goddart, and you can find him at www.goddart.com. But that kind of sums it up really well, Michael, because honestly and truly, if you're having issues with anybody in your life or just going about your life and don't have issues, just be as kind and compassionate and empathetic as you can possibly be, because it'll just happen again, right? If you don't, somewhere else with somebody else, it'll just, and I think that's important for us to all remember, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and I just so enjoyed being on the show. I love speaking with you, and anytime I'd be more than happy to come back.
Oh, you will be back, Michael, and my profound apologies with the screw up with the calls. I mean, that's what happens when you go live. If you have some technical glitches that haven't been worked through, then they just change some software and it's not working right. But I'll get that down. So I apologize for that. But otherwise, my God, you are a great guest, and you will definitely be back on this show. Thank you so much for calling me on a Sunday night and taking your own personal time to talk to us. And I really highly recommend this book. I really do.
Oh, thank you. You're most welcome, and I just love talking with you, Servette. All the very best.
Thank you. You take care. Good night. Take care.
Good night. Good night.
Thanks. What a great show. I did love him. I'm sorry the poor guy call back 5 times and then it didn't show up on the screen either, but they did change software and everything this day is computerized, and sometimes that's a blessing and sometimes that just screws you up really bad. But we will work it out. I'm telling you, next show, which I have a really good show next week about calling Bending Time, which is really awesome. This man has written, Paul Garlinger, I think is his name. I don't have the book in front of me, so I'm doing that by memory. But I do know the book. The title of the book is Bending Time, and he's fascinating. And I will promise I will have all the kinks worked out by then. Again, his name was Michael Goddart, Goddart. And he's at Goddart.com, and you can find me at ServetHassan.com, ServetHassan.com, and you can email me there too, so you can tell me how much I screwed up tonight at ServetHassan.com. I do the best I can, and I'm not firing myself quite yet, so because we've got some great shows between now and the end of the year. I can't, so I got to go through with this. But anyway, you can email me. I love hearing from all of you, and I appreciate all of you that do, and I get a lot. And just know that I don't answer all of my emails right away, but I always get to them within 2 or 3 days. As somebody responds, I respond, and then somebody else might write the message, but I always read every one of the emails I get. I just want everybody out there to know that. And you can go on my website. My website and everything else is being redone at the moment. So it's ServetHassan.com, but it's changing. And then I have another website that's going to connect to that. I'm going to talk about that later, about all the things I went through last year when I was diagnosed with a rare form of ovarian cancer, and I have kickedcancersass.com, and that's relating to my new book, If Life is a Cosmic Comedy, What Am I Still Doing Here? And the subtitle is How I Kicked Cancer's Ass and Found My Mojo. So I'll be talking a lot about that, but there's a new Facebook fan page that goes with that, a new website page, and my own website page is being redone with a bunch of other things to go along with that. I really love doing this show, and I want to tell everybody to be you to the full, because that's what I do every show, right? That's what makes you who you are, but it's also what brings you everything you want and need in this lifetime. I mean, we're talking about past lives, but really we're here now, and this is the life you should work on. So be you to the full, because when you do find that authentic self, like, the spirit inside of you, which we were talking about earlier on the show tonight, all things come very easily at that point in time. Trust me. So just keep listening. I love you all. Thank you. And I'll be back live next Sunday. Be you to the full. Take care. Good night.